All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of TheoryForge Fridays, episode 55 non player characters or flavor text vendors. So that's one of those kind of funny things. This whole episode and what we're going to be talking about here kind of spawned from a conversation that we had. A lot of it was between me and Zog regarding NPCs, and particularly with NPCs, like what conversation means, why it should mean something. What's the difference between having tedious conversation versus something that's worthwhile, and then actually having implications for gameplay, and then how that would even work in an MMO setting versus where it's a lot easier to do in a single player experience, like you would see in, say, Mass Effect or one of the offline Elder Scrolls games. So there's a whole lot that we have to talk about on this stuff. And before we get into it, I just kind of wanted to give everybody a chance to say hello and give some initial thoughts on NPCs, ideas about them, good, bad experiences, whatever you guys want to share. Go right ahead. Let's start clockwise. So, Velix, why don't you go?
Hello, everybody. Velix, of course. You're familiar with me. If not, you can learn about me here tonight and other places. But yeah, NPCs are, to me, I don't dislike my experiences with NPCs in a lot of games. It just depends to me on what's the point? What's the point of your game? Like, what are you trying to do with your game? And how do NPCs help facilitate a role in that? So, NPCs, I would say, as far back as I remember them being, you've got your first AI, Pong, AI that's moving it and doing that, but it's progressed from there. They can do a lot of other stuff now. I actually think that developers aren't exploiting the technology that currently exists as much as they totally could, especially in games where you'd think you would see a lot more of it, but you don't. So I guess that's the big thing for me right now. I'm like probably the last year or so I've kind of, with all the stuff we've been talking about on TheoryForge and my own writing and stuff with 10 Ton, I've just kind of discovered this whole new, back end to gaming that I didn't, it's not that I didn't know it was there, but I didn't really care about it before, or I don't know how best to say it. It just wasn't on my radar as much. And now I feel like there's a lot, because I'm looking at a lot of different games and seeing what they're doing. So I feel like there's a lot more, there's a lot more that can be done, especially if I see something really cool in one game and I want to see it in another game, which I think, I don't know if you guys watched our stream last week. We did Sword Coast Legends play together with everybody here, except we had Phantom X instead of Sog, and the dialogue was really weird in it, but Divinity Original Sin, which I played recently, had amazing multiplayer dialogue for the same exact type of gameplay. So
it was weird how.
Yeah, go ahead.
It was weird how.
Oh, it was weird because it just seemed really cutty, like it would intrude on the experience rather than help it. I mean, I guess the only thing that it really offered was it was your primary story delivery mechanism, which was good. Obviously, it kept the story moving in that way, but it seemed to interrupt the social gameplay and the pace of the game at times. Whereas, like in Divinity Original Sin, if you guys ever get a chance to watch a clip of that or something, the dialogue is just brilliant in that for the same type of thing. Like if they could have done something like that in Sword Coast Legends, I actually would have probably zero gripes about the game right now. It would be a really solid game. I think it's still a really good game, but it has its limitations to needing a full group. But that's not NPC related, so that's all of my rant for now.
It's kind of NPC related because it's the NPCs interrupting the game flow. So
yeah, that's true.
And I guess one of the other things is if we're talking about one of the things that Sword Coast Legends is trying to do is have some of that original D&D experience. GMs would have sidebar conversations. They'd be like, all right, me and this character, we're going to stand over here and talk for a moment. And then, maybe, just maybe, you'll allow the rogue to sit within a certain distance so he can eavesdrop to the best of his own personal abilities, his or her. if they want to get a little LARPing, and otherwise they could just hand them notes over afterwards, like you eavesdropped on the conversation, heard this and this or whatever. But that's definitely something that's straight out of classic D&D, especially once again bringing up rogues, the idea of the rogue that's stealing from their other players. Like you see the rogue say something, DM pass them a note, dice rolls happen. It's like, all right, I'm gonna check all of my bags real quick because I think something shady just happened. you know so it's a little bit of a different sort of thing. It's a little bit of a tricky thing to sort of manage, especially in the paradigm of like a multiplayer RPG of this type, and especially because it does really interrupt. Like to do something like that, it would basically be, instead of seeing the chat window pop up for everybody and knowing that what the conversation is that's going on, instead it would just be this person and this person are talking. You just couldn't interact with it or whatever. But anyway, I guess going back, Velis, were you still making a point, or Diggs, are you done? Okay.
Nope, I'm
I think
done.
it's Sod's turn.
Yes.
It's my turn.
Sog. Oh yeah, it is Sog's turn.
All right. Since our show is primarily about MMORPGs, say in single-player games, I love NPCs and interacting with NPCs. I love playing The Sims. I would play a lot of
Hobo
RimWorld.
Joe.
Yeah, I would play a lot of RimWorld, or I haven't really gotten into Dwarf Fortress, but some of the ideas of what the NPCs can do there and the quality of the AI in these games, they allow a rich experience for one player. What I don't like NPCs very much in MMORPGs, because I feel like the focus is too much on them. That what I want out of an MMORPG is interactions, meaningful interactions between characters. And until NPCs can actually do that, I would rather they only exist for required things that aren't satisfied, like gold sinks and stuff like that. I want to embrace I like embracing the fact that an NPC is not a real character and really just like making it junk. Because no one's taking it further and making it a valid character. The static NPC king of the town that just that stands in the same spot in the throne room all the time is not a valid character to me. And the fact that a mindless imbecile is the king of this town when there are players, characters controlled by players with motives and ideas in the town, it bugs me. I don't like it. I know that some of you guys disagree with me, but that's not... I don't like that in a game. I want there to be... If an NPC is not going to be a meaningful character that's interacting well, I want it to not try to be... Not be a fancy version of what it is. If the whole point of the character of the NPC is to sell a required item for gold so that it takes some gold out of the economy, I'm happy with that. But don't try to meet me halfway, because meeting me halfway is the worst of both worlds.
Fair enough. So, I do have a lot of thoughts on the subject. Instead of, really getting into too much detail, just one of the things for me with NPCs that I've actually thought to be a little intriguing was one attempt to try to, I guess, generate meaningful NPCs for the moment that they're needed. And I look at 3089 for this example. You would accept a quest. It would actually create the characters, create the NPCs in the world. It wouldn't actually use NPCs that existed, I believe. It would actually create them for the specific quest that you're trying to do. So if you're trying to escort someone from point A to point B, or you need to execute a specific enemy target, it would generate them at the moment that you accept that quest. So at that's kind of one of those uses of NPCs, not just as a quest vendor, but or someone that's just distributing text, or a money sink of one sort or another, but that they're actually something that you have to go out and find in the world and target. And it gave me a little bit of a sense of like, I just killed that. They're gone. They're dead. They're never coming back. A little satisfaction, or like when somebody dies, like, well, I screwed up that escort mission. I hope you didn't have something valuable. So anyway, I want to kind of get into the first little subject here is the idea.
Diggs hasn't had his
Oh.
initial rant yet.
Oh, whoops! I kept on getting the order mixed up there. Diggs, my apologies. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. I think we're gonna have a long show, so we might want to take some shortcuts eventually. But I think from the earlier conversations that we've had off camera, we're actually more in agreement with Sog than we actually end up discussing, because I think what we're hoping is that the NPCs that we currently have will be much more meaningful in these next generation games that we're waiting for, like EverQuest Next and Revival. They're going to have lives of their own. They're not going to be static. They're not going to be. They're not just going to be around to facilitate getting rid of gold, which was never the point of NPCs. I mean, originally the main difference from an NPC and a player character was that the DMs would be the ones who were driving the stories of the non-player characters. So they're supposed to be as interactive and as their lives are supposed to evolve as much as the players. It's just that they're run by the dungeon masters or the game masters instead of by the players. So, I mean, it might be that eventually a player or the players could become the mayor or king of a town, but they can't be everything in the town. Or everything in the world, so you need DMs to take over the characters that the players can't play. And that's kind of where we're hoping, I think, that NPCs will eventually get to. It's just when you have to program that, it's more difficult. So
from our conversations previously, one of the things that you've said that you want NPCs to do is you want them to be a meaningful population supplement.
I don't. So, for me, the problem with having everybody as a player is that players are dicks, and you can't necessarily get them to do what you need them to do. And I don't want to be playing a game. So, for me, a problematic example of too much player control is Arcade, where everybody takes up a whole. They buy up all the land, and newbies come in and they can't get land because the veterans have taken up everything, and so these newbies can't actually play. So that's my problem. That's why I hate player economy, because players are too greedy. I'm not paying the prices that they're wanting me to pay, so I stick with NPCs. So I like having NPCs around because they aren't as greedy and they aren't as much of a dick as players are. But other than that, I just want to interact with characters, and I don't necessarily care whether or not they're non-player characters or player characters. I think I began to care with MMOs when it became massively multiplayer rather than, co-op. With co-op people, then, you play with the people you like.
Yeah, I wanted to throw on there, when I was younger and I played like my first PC game ever, really, our PC RPG would be Daggerfall. And that was crazy. Like, there was NPCs everywhere. They all had little things about them. It was just like pretty amazing to have this populated world that was full, and the characters seemed to be doing things. But, the illusion eventually wore off. You realize there's limitations to it. But the sad thing is, like, games haven't really changed that much since then. Like, NPCs today, and a lot of MMORPGs operate still the same as they did in Daggerfall, except there's less of them because they don't procedurally generate them. So it's I don't know. I just thought that would be just interesting to throw out there. They haven't changed much yet. So next topic.
Yeah,
So
go for it.
that's one of those things. The scope of NPCs in a project is definitely one of the first things I kind of want to talk about, and this definitely touches on what Saga was saying. The idea that trying to meet halfway, you're right. It definitely does feel like it always falls flat to try to have NPCs that are like players, but don't really have the same kind of agency or motives or directives or goal, and it just, it's like, well, if you were a player, this would be totally cool, constantly meeting you in these different situations. But I can tell you've just been planted here to give me this flavor text and maybe get your butt kicked in the next battle like you always do. Whatever the purpose is, it generally doesn't fully work. And I'm talking specifically about MMOs. In single player games, there's definitely a lot more that NPCs are generally used for, and they actually end up being a lot more meaningful in single player experience a lot of the time. But also, it's the same thing, is that it's only happening once. It's not, in an MMO, you're usually expecting the NPC to keep doing the same thing over and over again, day after day, as everybody accepts that quest or gets to that point. So, scope of NPCs in a project. I like this kind of idea that if you're not going to go full on and have the NPCs just as robust as if they were being played by a player, then yeah, you just keep them watered down. You just keep them as glorified tools in the world that serve a purpose, rather than something that's supposed to give the illusion of population and diversity in a region, and that there's actually life out in this area. It's like, well, you found a vendor. Clearly, it's not all desolate wasteland here or whatever it is. But ultimately, it's either you're going to end up with something like that where it's extremely simple, or I think the other end of the spectrum that we'd be looking for is something where it's essentially, an MMO character, an MMO NPC, with the kind of, levels that need to be satisfied in their goals and needs, like a character from The Sims. Now, it wouldn't be the same context in The Sims. Most of the focus on the game is getting food, eating food, pooping, and sleeping. So you don't really get to spend a lot of time
It's all
like.
about woo-hooing, and you know it.
But the idea that like when your character goes off to work, you don't play that part. That part's like that part disappears. So The Sims is kind of an incomplete model, but the idea is that that's kind of the basis for what you would need. That every character not only has their basic physical needs and desires, they have their goals, they have purposes and duties and all of that sort of stuff. They have things that they want and need to do, but at the same time, the reason why they continue to live in that house in that town, even though that town sucks, is because their family lives there, or that's the only place they've ever been able to make a profit in all their years, so they just ended up settling there. So, whatever the reason is, that there's actually a reason behind it, though, that it isn't just this character's been plopped here, and if circumstances change, that they actually have the ability to get up and go. So, I think that's. I'm gonna kind of pass it around here again, and I'll definitely make sure to do the order right this time. But we're gonna send it in reverse. What do you kind of feel about it? So do you really feel that it should be NPCs as a simple thing, or NPCs as a highly robust thing, and really trying to find some scope that fits in between is a bit of a tough balance to fit, or is the scope of NPCs in projects something flexible, that maybe some of them are tools and some of them are highly robust? What do you guys think is the best here, or what are your opinions on it, I suppose? So let's start with Diggs and bring it around the other way.
Well, I think the problem is that we haven't seen AI that's at a place where we want it yet. We've heard, I think the reason that we've have been excited since 2013 is because we've been hearing about story bricks with EverQuest Next and the tagging system, which is very similar with Revival, where we will have NPCs that have drives and objectives, goals, and we'll also be reacting to bricks or tags that we have on our characters and interacting with us. But those tags or bricks will change over time as we interact with them, as they interact with each other. And so the lives of those NPCs will constantly be changing based on what's happening in the environment. And ideally, those NPCs will be going around doing things with each other. Their lives will change regardless of player interaction, but player interaction helps them along. So hopefully they're doing things hoping that they are getting player interaction. But I think we don't ever want, or I never want to be playing a game where the NPCs are simple or are just tools. I want the devs to constantly pushing the envelope as far as they can. We just haven't seen that actually happen yet. So we've got to, so far it's all tell and no show. We need some show. Just have to see what happens.
Fair enough. All right, Sog, how about you?
So the next step from first I'm gonna go back.
Yeah, go
We
ahead.
talked about, trying to meet in the middle and, trying to use the static NPC to be more than it really is. And, like, Wildstar is the... Neuro talked about it briefly a second ago. Diggs, shaking your head at me, or talking to somebody else.
Yeah, I don't think anybody wants to...
No, Diggs your internet.
Yeah. I am not aware of static NPC.
I think you just need to let me finish. That's not where I was going. I think one specific example of what can be bad is, like Neuro was talking about, adding in NPCs to give this feeling of population and diversity. So when you have limited quality of NPCs and then you put a lot of them there, in Wildstar it highlights the fact that they're low quality NPCs. Like, the place is bustling full of people just standing there and saying 140 line character things to you, or 140 character lines at you.
And the special ones with the voice acting too. Yeehaw! I'm the guy you saw on the last show, but I'm here now.
Instead of accomplishing the goal of making it feel more alive and making it feel better, because they're not any smarter, all I'm getting when I play is I've got more dumb in my face than I had before. Where I don't mind the wasteland of, like, Final Fantasy XI. You don't run into NPCs everywhere. There really aren't even many in towns. When you're out in the wilderness, they're monsters that you're fighting and stuff. And the majority of what you're doing, even in Final Fantasy XI, is you're meeting up with other players and doing things with them. And there is a story, an NPC storyline that you can follow through in some quests, but I prefer that. But moving forward, like, bring in the Sims and EverQuest Next, I think that the next step is, and what EverQuest Next talks about, and a little bit of what Revival talks about, feels a lot like group Sims. So, because this next level of AI isn't including language. So you're not going to be having real high-quality conversations with them. They're not interacting with you like people. So they're still non-player game pieces moving around. But what changes is that your actions, instead of just being handed a task and completing a task, your actions and interactions with the NPCs are about trying to get them to do things, which is the shift from it's the Sims idea. So it's I want to influence an NPC, or I'm part of this world, and what I'm doing is affecting them, and that's how I feel. That's what I feel like the next step is. That it's still not this idea of there are real characters and there's real awesome benefit. It's we haven't even got to the group sim stage yet, and we're talking about wanting to be at DM's control. Like they're part of a real DM world. And I'm worried that the middle ground. I'm worried that the first steps that are better than what we have now aren't going to be more playable or more player friendly or more enjoyable.
It's funny you said that, because when you brought up Wildfire, I was kind of thinking of that jerk that you see like in every zone, or at least in the early parts, and the idea that he's barking orders at every player that comes through is like, well, if you're some sort of intergalactic badass, why don't you go out there with your big bad pistol and knock those things over yourself in the same amount of time that it would take to wait for us dunderheads to walk over and do it? You know what? But what that ends up meaning is you've got the sergeant doing the grunt's work for them, and that character only exists as the sergeant that's barking orders at you. They aren't the grunt that's going out there doing the work. So it's one of those things that, like, well, how much autonomy do we want to give them, and how much ability to go above and beyond? Maybe if the quests haven't been done for 24 hours, they'll go out and knock the things over for a moment. They'll respawn in 5 minutes anyway.
Well, there's a few things, and I'm going to use Revival for an example. One is that it's not just about us influencing the NPCs, it's also about the NPCs influencing us. In Revival, the NPCs will be coming to us based on our tags and asking for us to help them. They'll be helping us, but they'll also be coming to us helping them. It's not just going to be us going to them. But also, it's not just going to be sergeants and heroes coming to ask us to help them. It's going to be cooks and whalers and caravanners and everyday people coming to us, tailors, asking for help. So it's not just going to be this situation where they could take care of the problems by themselves.
I don't see what you're saying as being meaningfully different. I know that I agree that yes, these are things that can happen, but it's still
these are things that will happen.
The way that you play is still creating the opportunities, and what you're doing in the world is still within what NPCs are doing around you framework, right?
Why is that any different than what players are going to be wanting you to do?
Because they can talk to you and interact with you like real people.
As long as they're interacting, why does it matter whether or not they're having a long conversation with you?
Because building relationships is what...
But you can build relationships without having a long conversation. That's the whole point.
You can't build relationships with a sim.
No.
I can't build a relationship with a sim. That's why Joe.
What do you mean? That's all you did.
That's why Joe Hobo moved from one house to the next. There was no meaningful relationship. It was you get what you get, and you move on.
Well, hopefully you are building relationships if you're causing and you're viewing and witnessing changes in the NPCs' lives as you would witness changes in a player character's lives.
But I'm not making that jump. It's not similar enough that I'm getting to that point.
Yeah,
I agree that it could be, but that quality isn't there. We need to move on to Velox.
Well, hold on. I was going to get into a personal thing, but the last bit there, I was first going on to what Neuro was talking about, but the other aspect with you is that with Revival, we've got storytellers who can jump into NPCs and they can have the conversations, which is a difference that we haven't seen before. So in that way, we do have DMs and GMs jumping in to make NPCs
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to put you in a position where you feel like you need to defend Revival. I wasn't attacking
No, I'm not. I'm just saying that storytellers is that other bridge where NPCs can come alive in ways that AI cannot. Go ahead, Felix.
There's a game I'm glad you guys have been talking about a lot, because I think MMORPG designers can learn a lot from The Sims. The reason that NPCs feel meaningful in The Sims is because they can generally do everything that you can do in that game. So because the NPCs can do all the things that you're doing, generally, they feel like other people in the game. The fact that they're, other people in the little world in the context of The Sims is because they have the power to do everything you can do. MMORPGs suffer, I think, because you've got all these NPCs and they can't really do anything compared to the player. The player can go, has all this autonomy. You can go do all these things, progress in all this way, and the NPCs, they really don't change at all. So they feel, just by the very use, the very purpose that they have in the world, they feel meaningless. They feel like little robots or little population filler. And I don't think, we're talking a lot about forward-thinking, next-gen AI, what can we do next? And I think that, it's great to talk about things we can do in the future, but I'm really interested in what we can do now. And I think great games can be made by actually, stretching the AI as far as you can right now, but then at the same time, dialing back what player agency you're giving to the extent where you're kind of putting them in the same realm as these NPCs. Because if you do that, all of a sudden they're going to feel more impactful in the experience, because if they can run around and kill a few things, even maybe they don't have an agenda, that already sets it up. Maybe I just think that there's ways that can be explored, not necessarily in reverse, but I think MMORPGs, they're just trying to give things for players to do. They're trying to throw this, add content and all this, but sometimes I think that taking away some stuff will actually enrich the experience. There's nothing worse than being in an MMORPG where you've got a million features added on and you don't even know what you want to do when you log in anymore. There's just no direction, no purpose, and those are great for sandboxes, but I think RPGs are built on the concept of, hey, there's a narrative here, there's something going on that you want to be a part of, or you're a part of. Maybe the hero's journey, even if there's not a hero's journey, there's this concept that this world is changing. Even when you have a static theme park MMO, World of Warcraft has changed narratively over the years, even the physically changed with Cataclysm. So it just bothers me when I see, players given, and I'm no bigger proponent of player agency. I want a lot of agency, but at the same time, I'm happy to have less agency if it's going to make the world feel more meaningful around me. When you guys were talking earlier, I was kind of thinking about, what was it? Snipe Hunter was playing a game on a Doc Crew stream a couple weeks ago. It was some hacking game, basically. But anyways, the AI in there was still using all the things the player could do. So even though it was an AI attacking, hacking your console, it felt, it could have felt like a player. You wouldn't have, if there's enough of that, level power ability, you're not going to even be able to tell the difference between players and people to some extent. And I think for a good role-playing game, you've got to keep players and people on this level. And as AI improves, you can allow more agency. And I think that's what Revival's trying to do. Go ahead.
Those are actually two completely different things, and I'm really glad that you brought it up, actually, because there is a huge, strong, dynamic difference between difficulty level and having agency. It sounds more like this thing, it felt like a player, but that was the way that the difficulty was balanced. And difficulty is this completely different, the opposite end of the spectrum with AI. The idea that, I think of a first-person shooter, I think of Dark Sim in Perfect Dark. This is the bot that is the absolute most perfect. It does everything that you want and need it to do. You start with that, and then dumb it down to the various levels to match the levels of gameplay. So, but that, once again, that's more for a single-player sort of experience. The idea that I don't really see it a lot of times where you've got the captain of a squad of NPCs being way more intelligent than their grunts. They usually just have higher stats. So that would actually be a really nice sort of thing to start to see is, the ones that are the leaders actually like not just having the agency that they're able to include the challenge level, but as well the idea that they have motivation. They when they go into it, they want to defeat you. As things start to go south, they don't want to lose their squad. They personally don't want to die, so they're going to do what they can. If they have to start backpedaling and get ready to run, they'll do it if you give them the tools to.
Yeah.
And now, Zexito asked us, what is agency? So, do any of you want to tackle that one? Otherwise, I can.
Well, yeah, I was going to keep going on from like
Go ahead.
what I was talking about in The
Another
Sims
30
to
minutes.
to moving
That's
into
fine.
revival, but no, it's perfect because I did want to like get into that because one of the differences between all the stuff I was just talking about and revival is that with revival they want to keep pushing the AI way further, and still maintain a lot of player agency. So, Zexito asking, what is agency? To me, I think agency is any decision-making power in the game that alters the experience. So, I mean, if you have like when you have the Mass Effect situation, you don't necessarily. I mean, there's some agency in there, obviously, with alternate endings and stuff, but a lot of that stuff is just so well written. You don't actually have player agency in some of those choices. You're just saying something, making a choice, and it's the illusion that they're responding to whatever choice you made. But anyways, I think that agency has to do with a player makes a choice and it impacts the game world. It alters it or does something. But anyways, so with revival, I think that's the big thing. They want the AI to react and change and do stuff based on tags, a tagging system in the back end, which with players, since our actions determine what tags we have, in effect, that's our agency playing out on the world because the NPCs are reacting to our tags, which we actually have control over, even though we don't know what they are. So I think that's an interesting component because it will help these NPCs feel more, alive. It will help them feel like impactful because they're moving pieces on a board. Because it's just like, I don't know, I guess I'll use an example in chess, like in chess, not all the pieces are equal. The queen is not equal to the pawn, but because the pawn is a piece that moves, it's important. It's like actually one of the most important pieces in the game. So I think NPCs in revival will kind of serve that purpose. They won't kind of emulate player characters the way I would like them to in the future, but just getting that starting point of having them be a movable piece in the world that reacts to players is great. But yeah, I think there's a lot of things that can be explored for games by dialing back player agency to actually mimic what they are capable of doing with AI currently. So, yeah, just some ideas, but I'm done ranting.
All right. Does anybody else want to kind of give agency a shot? For me, it's kind of the idea that instead of an NPC just being a static entity or an entity with a limited set of features, that instead it's able to actually have some amount of purpose and some ability to apply change to the world the same way a player would. Maybe not to the extent that the player does, but certainly, that tree wouldn't have been chopped down if somebody didn't go over and chop it down. A player didn't do it, an NPC happened to do it because they're a lumberjack. So that lumberjack has enough agency in that world to be able to go out, chop down trees, bring it back, turn it into, whatever they're going to do, or tap it and get the sap, or, whatever their purpose is with that tree. A player can do it too, but a baker, their kind of realm of agency, what they're involved with, what they deal with, they're not going to approach that tree for any purpose. Unless it's like that weird item in Shroud of the Avatar, the bark bread, that's literally like bread made from tree bark. I don't know why that would be delicious, but apparently it's real popular in that game. So that's kind of something that I want to kind of flow into a little bit, is the idea of, and I'm actually going to swap the order of what we were going to talk about here, the idea of NPCs actually having a purpose, a goal, duty, these things applying to their autonomy, why they do what they do. When I think of duty, I think of like, their family, where they live, their relationship with the town that they live in. If this is the town they grew up in, of course they're going to have an affinity towards it, unless they've been, treated like crap their entire life. Then they might be looking to leave. The only thing that might be keeping them there is family, and of course, if the entire town, family included, is treating them like crap, there's a good chance they're going to leave because there's enough motivators for them not to want. There's enough of a goal for them to not be living in that situation to overwhelm their duty to whomever or whatever was keeping them there, or whatever task. Maybe that's the only place they can be a blacksmith. Well, they're going to give up being a blacksmith to not be treated like crap. So, that's the sort of thing that I'd really like to see as, a major step towards making NPCs more worthwhile, is giving them purpose, giving them goals, giving them duty, and applying that to their own autonomy. So if they're going to stay in their shop all day long, only going out to grab a few groceries that they cook for dinner, for or breakfast or whatever they're going to be doing, however many meals a day or whatever you require for them, that's all stuff that is kind of built into their into their purpose, into their routines, because it's things that they need to do, or it's things that they want to do based on who they are and why they were created. And I'm not gonna get into too much detail, but I always bring up Stanislavski's 7 questions for characters in the scene. Who am I? What am I? Or what am I doing? Why am I there? What do I want? What's keeping me from getting it? And how do I overcome that goal? And I think when is the other thing there that I missed. So, with all of that in mind, the idea of giving NPCs something that's actually driving them, that the reason why they're always in town at that location is driven by something. Likewise, the reason why you're always seeing them on the roads getting their butt kicked by burglars or whatever, there's a reason for that too. So I'm gonna kind of send this one back around in clockwise order. Velix, what are your thoughts on this?
What's the question? What is the specific prompt? You just talked for a long time. I don't know what you're hoping to get out of this.
What do you want to see in terms of the like I was saying, the NPCs being able to be given purpose, goal, duty, things to do in the world, things that drive what they do, and I guess partially, what's that going to mean for games? And another aspect of it is, how should it be executed to maximum effect?
Well, I talked a lot about stuff already, but I'll just say really quick, kind of just, I think what I want to see for AI moving forward, if they're going to be given goals and agendas and things like that, that they actually have the power to do whatever these things are. Like, don't give me an NPC that says, blah blah blah, I do this is my job, if they don't actually do that in the world. Like, don't do that. I don't know, maybe I'm too picky, but I just want to see, somewhat more. I don't know. I don't know how to answer this question. I just think that NPCs, I want to see match character agency closer, because I think that's what's going to make them feel more meaningful in the game. If they can do that,
the standard for agency in an MMORPG is none.
Well, yeah. I mean,
this is where I don't understand where you're going. The standard is really
not
none.
necessarily.
Because we're talking about games that we're hoping that were like EverQuest Next and Revival, that are next generation.
Well, no. The standard
old stuff
But even
isn't.
in Revival has built-in systems to curb agency to ensure that it doesn't get out of hand, which is a good thing, right?
I have to disagree with you, Sog. The player agency in current MMOs is not none. You have agency over your own character's progression. That's it. NPCs do not have that same agency.
I don't think that's agency.
It is. You're able to choose what class you are, what your different skills are, the way as you're gaining power, where you're going. NPCs don't have that. If they gave NPCs just those things, the ability to actually increase in power and roam around the world, that would already be a huge it would seem like next gen AI to a lot of people, but that's just scratching the surface. But that's my whole point. I would just like to see maybe players in typical MMOs go down a bit and agency just bumped up a little bit, and that would already be good for me. It would be good. What I would like to see is what Revival talks about, where you can actually start pushing them around and you can start influencing things by decisions you make. Because to me, decisions you make is agency that actually is meaningful to a human being. Because, I don't know, I hope I don't offend anybody with this, but just going into a game and having the agency to choose a few different skills and progress up a power chain is not meaningful to me. I want to actually be able to alter the experience or manipulate the game board or, do things that, I'm able to interact with people and start to see their personality or see their things from their personality in their character and express them through mine. So I think, again, I don't want to offend anybody, but just going into a game to hear the narrative and just, max out my character or whatever, that's just totally superficial to me. And I don't want to offend anybody, but I'm just personally, I like story that I can be involved in. That's what games are to me. If it wasn't that, I would read a book. Because if I wanted a story told to me. But yeah. Anyways, I pass.
All right, Sog.
It would be cool if NPCs were doing things. All right, that I'm going to say that, but I'm not sure that it changes. That until player agency is dramatically improved, it doesn't change anything. But for me, that it becomes, like I said, it becomes more like playing group Sims. That it would be awesome if the NPCs are moving around and, there's something pushing them, like real motives. Maybe they're moving to another town. You go to an area and there aren't the same exact NPCs sitting there, and they're different things going on in different ways, and the environment is different each time you come back. It creates a lot of replayability. It makes things very nice. But what I want to get away from, and why I'm not really pushing for that, is that that's really nice in a single player type environment where the NPCs are part of, where it's about you interacting with the world, where NPCs are part of the world. And that's great. I don't have any problem when I like playing those games, but when I'm playing an MMORPG, I want it to be about, if I go to a town, I don't want to find out which NPC is currently the town baker. I want to know which player is the town baker. And that's important to me.
Why do you care whether it's a player or a non-player
because
character?
I want to be able to really talk to him.
So
And
if it's
I want to be that. Maybe I want to fill that role actually in that town and be part of a group of players doing that together, not creating a situation where the NPCs let me do that.
So if you have a storyteller inhabiting a baker, and you and that storyteller are rivals for the mayor's barbecue, and he's going to have desserts at the barbecue, and you can talk to that baker because it's going to be inhabited by a storyteller.
I've played several games where NPCs are inhabited by storytellers sometimes, and when you're there and they're not currently being inhabited, and this delay is really awkward. It's very, very difficult. That it's not a continuous experience. If it could be a continuous experience, I would be very much for that. And I don't have a problem with it happening. I think it's a cool addition to a game, but it's not. But I've stood in front of an NPC that I had interacted with an hour before and waited.
I think that one of the things I would be, I don't know, I guess I would just be cautious to get my hopes up about it. I don't think the storytellers in Revival are going to be that active. I think they're going to be good storytellers and they're going to create good story, but I don't think they're actually going to be in characters interacting with people constantly. I think they'll be doing a lot of stuff actually like almost not logged in, I would say, like telling NPCs to go here, manipulating, dropping items, changing things, switching tags and stuff, applying different properties to tags. I think that's going to be the majority of their role, and they'll occasionally, for event type stuff, would go in and maybe, bounce around between NPCs to cause things to happen. But I don't think there will be enough storytellers to actually interact with us for any significant period of time.
So anyway, to finish up my thing before moving on to Diggs's rant on this subject, I think it's cool if NPCs are smarter and doing more things, but what I want NPCs to be, I want them to fill in behind players instead of players going in to experience what NPCs are doing. And that's the key behind my entire train of thought here. That's what's been missing. And anyone who's known me since like early Landmark times, like with Layspring and trying to build cities and create kinds of like player-driven, meaningful interaction, and then once we supposedly were going to be able to have NPCs, build our own NPCs to add more depth to that player-driven and player-created experience, I was very much excited about that. I think it would be cool to log into a game that is about having dynamic NPCs and experiencing that and playing around with it, and even, occasionally having one come to life and having a special one-on-one DM type experience. It sounds good, but that's not where I really want. That's not what I'm craving from a game. What I'm craving from a game is that the town is a group of players, like that a big city, that there are Neuro talked about faction briefly in chat. No, I want player factions and NPCs to be loyal to player groups. I don't want to spend my time making an NPC like me. Maybe I could recruit an NPC to my cause. That's cool. But I don't want... I want to be in a world with some limitations and some story limitations and some sort of control to keep it contextually clear for the world. What Umbla talks about, rule of world or whatever, that some things will just never happen because they don't fit with the style of world that they want Revival to be, and I think that's great. But I want what's going on in the world to be more about, this is what this group of people are doing, and NPC events put pressure on groups of people, and that's what's cool about it. Instead of the NPC event is what's going on in the world. It's very difficult for me to communicate all this, but I'll pass on to.
There's a lot to talk about there, and I can tell there's a lot of different threads you can go on just on the things that you said there already. Diggs, what you got there, buddy?
So, to me, I think what most people will want is something. It is all of what we're saying, but I'm kind of on the opposite end of Sog in terms of my optimism about gameplay, because I think people suck at role playing. Lots of people in MMORPGs don't care about role playing, and so interacting with them is not going to be much fun, because all they're going to be caring about is the mechanics of who they can kill, what they can grab, what they can get. They don't care about building relationships with other players besides how can you facilitate them killing stuff, how can you facilitate them getting more gold, how can you facilitate them getting more gear, which is one of the reasons why I want NPCs to have more agency. And part of them having more agency is giving them not only a goal, but actually objectives, drives, and feelings, like with the story bricks idea. We have an emergency fire alarm that's just a test, I believe. I don't think I actually have to leave. Hold on a second.
I say that every time there's a fire. I don't think I actually have to
Well,
leave.
they had a test last night and they were telling us do not leave. So I'm hoping that's just
But there's a fire
an extension.
alarm.
What we want, I want to experience NPCs who have emotions that are changing, as well as their lives changing. And I don't think we're going to interact with a lot of players necessarily who are going to evoke their emotions and really, really interact with us as we would expect other characters to play. So I want both. I want NPCs to be closer to being on par with PCs, and I want to see NPC bakers, but I want player character bakers to have the opportunity to be important. I want player characters to be able to become the mayor. I want player characters to be able to become the king, but I don't want them to shut out everything on the NPC side.
Okay.
I think they should be more on par.
That's definitely what I want to get into for the next topic. So before we get on to that topic, though, there's definitely something I kind of wanted to say here, which is for me, part of advancing NPCs is just giving them all purpose and like a feeling that they actually exist in the world. I think of like Shenmue, for example, where you could follow, if you want to be a creepy stalker, you could follow every single character from when they leave their door at the beginning of the day, all throughout their entire day, and then all the way back when they go back home at the end of the day. And I don't know if you could look in the windows. I didn't really play through all of that set of shenanigans, and unfortunately don't have the Dreamcast to check it. But it's that idea that they all they have something to do. Now with Shenmue, there was this idea that everybody had their day job. I don't know if there's really any difference for weekends, so they'd all have this cycle that they go through, but it's a very static thing. But even a static cycle would be a step in the right direction, or rather, the motivators as to why they do these things daily and what would cause them to do things differently. So I think about things like resource limitations, like, if everybody's got enough food and water and the resources they use to do their job, and everybody's, making the coin that they need to buy their goods and pay their taxes and rent and everything, everything has reached equilibrium and everybody is just going through their daily cycles. And, that's cool. Even just having that is great. But then having something beyond that, having the idea that, maybe they have goals. There's something that, somebody's saving up money for, and maybe emergencies happen every now and then that they have to spend a bit of that coin. So something that they thought, if, ideal situation, it'd take them a year to save up to buy this thing. Maybe they're going to buy a sword, which is what you need in order to join the town militia or whatever, and it's taken them 5 years because they've had so many setbacks. Okay, that's cool. That's sort of kind of adding a little bit more, or various other sorts of goals. Maybe they want to go on vacation. Maybe they want to go to another town because they've heard of this other famous baker who they can learn from and be an apprentice for. So they're trying to save up to move out, or at least make the journey and see if that's possible. And then even more than that, virtues and vices and habits start to get into it. Somebody who will do good or do bad, to go above and beyond what they would do in their normal, cycle, that already starts to kind of add a little bit more. Maybe this person, they've started drinking or whatever. They started getting addicted to alcohol. Maybe every now and then, like they'll get in a real bad situation. They run themselves out of money. They have to go to the other end of town, the shady part of town, and mug somebody. And they don't necessarily want to do it, but at the same time, they're addicted. They don't want to be without alcohol. So, as these, or whatever substance it would be. So the idea that you've got all these different factors, that you've got not only the daily cycle or whatever they do, but then all these variations, and then being able to throw yet another layer onto it, what happens when things upset that daily cycle? There's no blacksmith anymore because the miners have run the mine out of material, or the last cave-in caused the mining company to leave. So you can't get minerals, you can't get metal, you can't get ore. The smelters are gone. Now you've got one blacksmith who can't get any material. He can't earn any coin. He's basically out of a job. He leaves town for better, greener pastures. A month later, the town's in shambles. There's hinges broken here and there. Wrought iron lamps are at a premium in the market because nobody's making them anymore. That it doesn't upset daily life enough that the NPCs will leave, but they might actually, either do something about it or ask upon the players to help them out. The idea that, like, that somebody is a blacksmith. They're just passing through town because they're on this grand adventure to slay a dragon. It's forged its bones into the mightiest weapons in the land, and you manage to stop them from. I was like, dude, I know you're like way above this stuff, but our town has fallen apart, and if you plan to come back here in like a month after you guys finish on your way back, this place is basically going to be screwed. So we need a little help. If you guys could help us out, you'll be a hero around here. We'll have everything taken care of. That's the sort of thing that I'd like to see NPCs being there for. That there's enough stuff going on that they have their own daily lives that they're constantly tending to. They've constantly got their meters that are depleting that they need to replenish, and they've got their tasks and chores and other things that they've taken up, but that anything can upset that. When you've got something like that, while it's in a sort of state of equilibrium, it's a lot of things in motion being equilibrium, rather than when you look at a static town in MMO, like you go to Gadgets Inn and WoW or whatever, that place doesn't move. Nobody moves. Nobody goes anywhere. Nobody does anything. It's a live and bustling town where everybody is basically just stuck to a post. You might as well be talking to a tablet on a stick, just sticking out of the ground. Just beep boop. Hey, buddy. There's there's nothing to them. So that's kind of the thing that I'd really like to see. Now, in facilitating this, yes, there should still be NPCs that are a little bit more amazing than that. And so one of the subjects I want to talk about is the idea of ordinary PCs and NPCs versus extraordinary PCs and NPCs. And the ability to use them. Think of something like the static MMO, the conventional MMO. Most of the NPCs are ordinary. They don't do anything special. They can't do anything special. Even if they're a level 60 that joins you in some special battle for a moment, they're still pretty ordinary. They're not doing anything other than what the script tells them to do. Versus players are extraordinary. They have agency. They can do things. They can affect change in the world, even if those things are going to respawn in 30 minutes. So it's then starting to look at the idea of, well, what happens when we have extraordinary NPCs, or even a different sort of angle, what an Alcoholic like Diggs would really be into, the idea of actually having ordinary PCs, a shopkeeper that's actually important to the world, even though they're never going to go on any grand adventure. And then it's actually fun and meaningful and worthwhile to actually play a part like that. So on the subject here of, and this is the one that I kind of want to talk about here, the idea of the balance of PC, ordinary versus extraordinary PCs and NPCs. Do you guys think that there should be any blend between the two? Should all NPCs either be ordinary or extraordinary, or it just depend on the scope of the project? Whoever wants to jump in first. Sog, you said
yeah,
had something?
I'll go first on this.
Go for it.
I think that from D&D and moving forward, that one of the attractions to an MMO or to role-playing in general is the idea that you can be that special individual hero, and that has been embraced by a lot of games. Like, that hero's journey, trying to emulate it, and what it's turned into is that every player is on the hero's journey, and every NPC is someone you meet along the way. Where my preference for playing and my preference for like what I'd like to experience is dialing back that for the players a lot, where that you may sometime in the life of your character have the opportunity to stand out and do something or be extraordinary, but that you're not born into the world already on the beeline to greatness. That if the circumstances align, that you may actually find yourself on some special, even unique adventure that gives you a great reward, or even affects the entire world in a great way. But the expectation is that when you log in, instead of thinking about what's next on my path that I'm moving forward along, that I'm being guided on, it's to think more about, well, who is my character and what is my character and what does my character do? That if you log into the world, and I want to be a part of the world more than take something from the world. I'm not logging in there to get the experience that I'm being fed when I'm logged into the game. I'm logging in because I want to fill that role of who I am and who my character is and where I fit into the player social structures and where I fit into and what NPCs think about me. So I've been playing a lot of Akia recently. I don't ever log into the game thinking that I'm going to be going on some like amazing dragon quest. I never, and I don't have any desire to do that. That's just not what my character does in the game, and I'm okay with that. But that's fine. I don't want. But now talking about having extraordinary NPCs, I think that it would be interesting if instead of like what I see in games where this is possible through like DM control, like Armageddon or Shadows of Isildur or a game like that, is that an NPC is basically created to fill that role when they want to tell that story in the world. Where I think it would be cool if that NPC who's filling a role and living a day-to-day life, that circumstances align where he does find himself on an epic quest. So, and this idea of building in a world that has some sort of equilibrium that players fit into and disrupt, that they both disrupt and contribute to in different ways, because so players feel pressure and give pressure, and it all maintains that sometimes it is an NPC that gets that opportunity would be for something great, would be cool. I would be okay with that. I don't feel like I would lose out, because maybe in that, maybe somehow I get dragged along. Maybe somehow in the wake of that story I have my own special thing that happens, and that's what I want. I want circumstances to come about that give people unique stories to tell about what happened to them in the game, and not talk about that time you did quests in Gadget Sand. And everyone's like, yeah, I did that quest. Yeah, me too. Cool. Dude, that was awesome. Like, no. I want to talk about something that I did in the game that was special just for me, even if it wasn't meaningful for the whole world, but I had that. That was my experience in the game, not the experience of the game.
Yeah, I agree with almost everything you say there. I think that it'd be great to have, players getting to carve out a niche of their own in the world and not always having to pursue that hero's path. If you don't want to, I think that, one of the coolest things about online these MMORPG worlds, this huge world, is that, the potential for emulating a whole another living world is there. So I think it'd be really cool if players had the freedom to be as small or as big as they want to be instead of being forced to be big. But that aside, to stick to the main question of small PC, big PC, I mean small NPC, big NPC, scope, scale, or whatever, I really think that just coming from the perspective of a storyteller, some of the greatest characters I've read about are actually supporting characters. So I kind of consider those NPCs in the ideal game. That would be player-centric. NPCs are supporting roles, but it doesn't mean that they can't be powerful. I think there needs to be a good mixture. However, the caveat is, like I was saying earlier, if you're going to have a super powerful NPC, you better be able to do super powerful things, like actually go out and impact the world, not just say, I'm the leader of this faction and I'm going to order you to do this stuff, and I'll show up at the cutscene when you've finished it to claim all the credit or something, I don't know. But I think that, there's ways that it can be done cleverly, I think, to create the illusion of power. But I think if you're going to have power, it has to be, actually represented with some agency in the world, rather than just, or at least the illusion of change. I think that, for all the things I beat up on World of Warcraft for, I do, in a way, like when they do the type of, instance things where actually things change in the world. I just wish that they weren't instance, but that's just a matter of, the game wasn't designed to operate that way.
You mean
so
the phasing?
Yeah, the phase. That's right. Phasing.
You complete one quest and then you go back and you're on the next phase of that town.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I like the phasing because it feels like things are changing and it actually increases the value of the NPCs for that particular instance. I just don't like that it's claims to be a multiplayer game, and there's so many things like that make it single player. But anyways, the point is, if that can be done without phasing in modern MMORPG, that would be a step into next gen, in my opinion. But yeah, that's all I have on that topic.
So I don't like the idea of separating ordinary from extraordinary, and I especially don't like it in terms of static. I don't want any static NPCs. They should all have drives and feelings that change. It should not be what is my goal as a broad static answer. That should be changing constantly. One of the examples from EverQuest Next that we had with Storybricks was that the shopkeeper becomes jealous if you speak to his wife too often. And one of the things that I would love to see is that I'm a diplomatic character. I decide to flirt with the shopkeeper's wife to try and get better prices, and lo and behold, one day she starts flirting back, and that changes our relationship. But because she starts flirting back, that's what drives the shopkeeper to become jealous, and that starts a whole story. What does the jealous shopkeeper do? Does he tell the guards that I stole something from them when my character didn't really? Does he try to kill his wife? Does he kill his wife and blame that on me? What happens because I chose to flirt with the wife? Or what happens if I find myself flirting with the shopkeeper himself? I was playing Versu. Versu is a kind of choose-your-own-adventure AI experiment. And as you go through, you have various goals that you're trying to attain at the end of the story. So one of the stories is you're trying to get hired at a gaming company, and you go through all these things, asking the interviewer questions, and all of a sudden the male interviewer starts flirting with you, and that changes the dynamic. I was on the bus playing this game thinking, really? If I want to get this job, I'm going to have to flirt with this dude? Okay, how can I flirt with this dude? I normally have not been in that position, but if I really want this job, fuck it, I'll go ahead and flirt with this dude. Or the HR person comes in and checks in on us, and one of the options is to rat the dude out on the HR person and get him fired. Those are the kinds of things that I want to. I want to be emotionally driven and emotionally attached to these NPCs, and have their feelings change based on what I'm doing or based on what's happening in the game. I don't necessarily want the NPCs to leave. Because they don't have any more than the finances ran out. Maybe dragons are moving in to take over the town and they're scared, so they move out. Or maybe the in EverQuest Next it would be orcs. Maybe the orcs are stealing too much money from the travelers going back and forth, and they think that it's not safe anymore, so the residents of the town leave for a safer place. Those are the kinds of interactions that are the push and pull. And so it's not just that they need heroes necessarily to come in, but if you don't want that to become a ghost town, even if you're not a soldier or a fighter, you choose to go through and help the town out because they need the help. So I want the NPCs and the PCs to be characters and have the kind of push and pull that will throw you into an adventure or not.
And I think that we're very similar on that in that you want to take away from that the potential of experiencing something that could only have happened like because of everything combined, and it only happened then, which is
the right time at the right place.
And you can't build a wiki to say that if you go here and then you go here, and if you say "hi sexy" to the baker's wife, it'll trigger this event. It'll have to be that you and everything that your character had done and everything that the NPCs had done leading up to that point created that one opportunity, and it was blown out of proportion.
Yeah, that was the best part with playing Versu. When I'd go back to replay for a different objective, I'd be talking to that guy and say, okay, maybe I need to flirt with this guy to get what I want. And he'd be, what the hell are you doing? I'm reporting you to HR. Like, it didn't play through the same way twice, even though I would make the same decisions. It would depend on timing and the mood of the character at any given moment. It's not just that this one character always flirts with dudes. He might flirt with a dude under certain circumstances. And those are the kinds of things that I think that we're hoping the AI with story bricks and with these tags is they might have some kind of general, it can't be just completely random, but it's got to change. Their moods have to change. What they will end up doing will depend on when you initiated something and the environmental circumstances.
Or maybe the fact that Neuro was hitting on his wife the day before had already predisposed the baker to be watching out for this, right? See, even that kind of thing, that it wasn't even just you, it was that this is an ongoing problem, and right. He had just had enough.
Yeah, maybe all I said was hi. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. No dudes are allowed to talk with his wife again, Yeah, that's what we're looking for, I think. That's what I'm looking for.
Okay. So, we can...
Oh, let me say something about Rollmaster, because that's a game system that was out in the late 70s and 80s. Similar to it was a role-playing system that would help you create characters. But the cool thing about that, it was one of the first systems that I became aware of that had other classes besides the heroic classes. So some of those classes you could develop in Rollmaster back in the day were like Freethinker, Witch Hunter, Seeker, Romantic. They did have Astrologer, Sleuth. They had all these kinds of other cool characters that weren't just super heroic fighters and wizards and all that stuff. And I think that is where we're hoping to go to, is that we can inhabit these roles that aren't necessarily gung-ho heroes.
I think one last thing to mention too here is one thing I like that Revival's doing that opens up a lot of doors when it comes to NPCs of what you can do is when you move away from combat being the kind of only purpose for players, that really limits how you can use NPCs or what, how they facilitate the game experience. So I'm excited to, and I think Sog too has talked about it, and from what little I got with it, with IKEA too, it's not necessarily all about combat. There's a lot that you can do outside of that. So, but yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing that because I think it really opens up what potential there is for NPCs for, actually doing something meaningful in your experience, because they don't necessarily have to be a mob for you to bash or to go be an ally as you fight or escorting situations or kill me X of this. I think it really makes things way more expansive. So it'll be cool to see some different ideas they have because you think about it, even if they don't really change, like let's say questing is still really, really similar, there will be a lot of different type of quests you can have when it's not about combat. When you have some diplomatic quests you can do, or some artistic quests, or
but there's already
some
quests about delivering letters.
No,
I want NPCs to come up and ask me to bake a pie.
No, I mean like a quest like convince this person to vote for me or something. So you have to actually have the charisma, or you have to do things for that other player, whatever they are, or that other NPC to, push it a vote one way or another. Things like that. Just like it could be diplomatic, it could be, I actually like the idea of this super dangerous world where anytime you go somewhere remote, it's extremely dangerous because then you have people that can actually get paid for like mapping and cartography because not everybody goes out there, and if you do go out there, you're going to want to know where you're going and what's there. So stuff like that.
As long as the only reason to go there is because you have a specific drive to, and that it's perfectly okay to not want to. What we see in games is that you can't make absurd difficulty because the path in the game takes everybody there anyway, and it's just punishing instead of like it's okay if there are things that you are incapable of handling if that's not the only thing that you can do. If there's a path you can take, and like the games already have a lot of the types of quests that you mentioned, like go make people vote for me, which is really just one quest to go pick up another quest from another guy, and then do that quest, and then you complete 3 quests, and you finally turn it back into the main guy saying, I completed a quest for each of those guys, and now they're all going to vote for you. But what needs to happen is that you just stumbled upon the opportunity for that need instead of that's just what you do in the town.
That need is always there or whatever.
So, and the word quest even becomes bad when you start talking about it in this sense, because when we see a quest, it's you're given a task to accomplish. But instead of, this is just part of your interactions. Like, you're going through and somebody says, hey, I heard that you're a baker. I need a pie for this event at this time on this day, and it needs to impress. And I'm so glad that you are here. Can you do that for me? That's not a quest. You're being brought into an event. And it shouldn't be talked about. Like, the game shouldn't talk about it. They would need to create their own language for describing these kinds of interactions, because it's not a quest. In that sense.
Revival has gossip and rumors, so it might not be a quest at all. You might just hear there's an event, there's going to be food there, and you're a baker, so you're like, maybe let me go see if maybe I can make a special pie. Maybe I've got some special beer that I know they're going to love this beer because nobody else makes it. And you go see if you can get them to purchase. You know, rumors and gossip. Yeah, that would be great.
All right, Neuro, do you have another quick topic that we could zoom around?
I was muted
Oh.
apparently. I was just finishing off on top of you guys. I was saying, I'm glad you clarified that because I think that is the key point. Doing, actually having an opportunity that's not always persistent. That could just appear based on a set number of circumstances. And I think that the tagging that Revival is doing is the first back end experimentation that we've heard of so far that is able to accomplish some of those things. So I think that's why it's so interesting to us, and we brought it up a lot tonight for anybody who's wondering. But yeah, I'm interested to see other games pursue some of this back end information storing that allows NPCs to react differently to you, because I think that creates the opportunities as far as mechanically goes. But yeah, okay. I'm done anyways. Neuro, go ahead.
Yeah, and that kind of goes back to what I said in previous episodes about interactions with NPCs. Not just the circumstances of what's going on, but instead of a sum of all interactions, a product of all interactions. So things going on in the town, things going on with your particular reputation, etc. So many layers compounding relative to how they deal with you, rather than feeling like a D20 roll for your charisma check for how they feel about you at that moment. So there is actually one subject. It's not a small one, though. Meaningful conversation, which is actually kind of the thing that I really, that started this whole thing. We didn't really get a chance.
Show, and
yeah, that's what I was about to say. Is that's going to be the part 2 of this.
Yeah, we should all play some Versu in the meantime to get.
Well, let's do this then. We are planning to do Sword Coast Legends again. I believe we're gonna do that another one here soon. So that'll be great. Great information to check out before you guys hear our talk on that. So watch some Sword Coast Legends and with us have fun, hang out, and then we'll talk about it on the next show. Not tonight, but another day. We'll let you know when we're gonna play.
For sure, definitely keep an eye on Twitter and, of course, the YouTube page here. And, that is it. Thank you all very much for coming for this episode. Velix, Diggs, Sog, been a pleasure chatting with you guys about this subject. Everybody in chat, been a pleasure. Really appreciate it. And we'll see you next time.